how many of you read Glenn Greenwald. I read him every day. He's on Salon. He switched over actually to The Guardian now, but his stuff still is on Salon. But he brought up some problems with Move to Amend that need to be worked out.
It has to be convicted and told.
But the main thing is public banking. State and local governments have no money because they were stupid enough to send it to Wall Street and promptly destroy it. With public banks, they will have plenty of funds to operate, fund pensions, and pay a living wage to their employees. This is a near long-term goal. It's not something you can do overnight. It's going to take decades.
The state banks? State banks?
State banks. State of North Dakota has a state bank. They're the only state in the country that's not bankrupt. They're able to pay their pensions. They're able to have their fund their health care, and all that stuff because they have a state bank. All economics is local. That's the whole thing. And the main point of my talk is all economics are local. It has nothing to do with Wall Street. Wall Street is just a financial machine. They churn money to make money, and that's all they do. They turn over money to make more money, and that's all it is. Modern monetary theory. This has been the main proponent of this is at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. Michael Hudson is probably the best known person, and William Black. William Black was an attorney who cleaned up the S&L mess in the 1980s. These two guys are really tremendous. So find and watch whatever interviews you can find by Michael Hudson and William Black. They're from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. They have an economics blog that talks about modern monetary theory, and there's links to it, and there's stuff I have in the backup. Okay, here's how an economy works. The economy is like a car. It requires fuel to power the engine for the car to move. The engine requires grease and oil so it doesn't blow up.
Okay, thanks.
The engine has pistons powered by fuel and air and a spark, sending energy to the wheels via the transmission and drive shaft. The fuel is credit. The grease and oil are the currency. The pistons are the people working, and the air and spark are people's ideas and inventions that sends power to the wheels, and the car economy runs. Move to Amend, as I said, this is public banking. This is a longer-term goal which requires local organizing to get state, county, and city governments to start public banks that take by eminent domain foreclosed properties, invest their pension funds along the lines of the State Bank of North Dakota. Other avenues to keep funds local is self-financing healthcare with local physician groups. And remember, all economics is local. The multiplier effect is huge. Rules for public banking. Invest in the local economy by making loans to local businesses, home mortgages. Multiplier effect is huge. As I said, the guru of this is a woman named Catherine Austin Fitz. She's at Solari.com. Actually, her father was my surgical attendant when I was a student at Penn, and she graduated from Wharton at the same time I graduated from med school, 1978. Loans are made on the basis of liquid assets only, i.e. no fractional reserve banking. Fractional reserve banking is the thing that's the main problem, because money is created out of nothing. When someone takes out a loan, the bank punches some numbers in the computer keyboard, which puts this funds in their account, but it's really just digital money. It didn't come from anywhere. They didn't take money out of Mrs. Brown's and Mr. Jones's account to lend to this person to buy their house. They punched it in a computer keyboard. Okay, when they do that, that deposit goes in the bank and they count it as a deposit, so that's an asset. Or, I'm sorry, it's a liability, because they owe the person the money. They have to give the person that amount of money, but the person can write that amount of money on with their checkbook. But they also put it down as an asset because they have the loan. So it's a double entry. And so then they can loan out 9 times that amount of money because of this fractional reserve banking. They can lend out 9 times what they have as assets and more loans. So they can just repeat this computer keyboard exercise time after time, and it creates this fiat money which doesn't really exist. And then when the money supply is contracted, people can't pay back their loans, and then the properties get foreclosed. Secret of money is the big thing. All money is debt. If the U.S. debt was paid back, there would be no money. It would be all gone. It would be out of circulation totally. Money is what you pay your taxes with. The reason there's taxes is because that gives value to the currency of the country. If there were no taxes, you wouldn't need money, because you could do all your economic activity via other means. You wouldn't really need money. The only thing you need money for is to pay the taxes, and that's what gives the currency value, because you have to obtain some to pay your taxes. Money does not work. You know these investment people who say, give your money to my investment firm and we'll make it work for you. Well, the money doesn't work. People work. And they accumulate labor units, which really is what money is. You do something that's for somebody, and that accumulates credits, and you're owed money for it. Modern monetary theory. This is a long-term goal. It's actually old monetary theory. Governments of sovereign countries cannot run out of money because they have the inherent right to extend credit and issue their own currency. Ben Franklin did that in Pennsylvania successfully for a number of decades in the beginning, back in the early to mid 1700s. But then the Brits began to counterfeit it, and then that destroyed it. They issue credit into the economy and spend on infrastructure an amount equal to the interest on the credit issued. This is the problem that we have now, why we have all these crashes. Since the Fed was instituted in 1913, it was instituted primarily to prevent economic crashes, which happened in 1907. And then there was another one, and they said, well, we have to do this, and we have to do something to prevent these crashes. And that's supposedly what the Fed was for. But the problem is that it lends out this money at interest that the government has to pay back, but the interest doesn't come with it. You have to borrow more money to pay the interest, to pay the loan back. So it's a continuous Ponzi scheme of turning these loans over and more loans, and you cannot get out of debt with more loans. It's just impossible. And the problem is that the interest does not come out in the economy. And that's what Pennsylvania did, and that's what modern monetary theory says you have to do. You issue credit into the economy, you spend into infrastructure an amount equal to the interest so the loan can be paid back. That way you keep a constant money supply. And it only adjusts with population and the need for economic growth. What you need is a per capita amount of money in the population or in the society, so that the economy will run. That's what I said about currency being the grease in the oil. If you don't have enough currency in the system, the economy blows up. It's just like a car not having, running out of oil or running out of grease in the wheels. So you have modern monetary theory. More government spending is not financed by borrowing, savings, or taxes. Government spending, including deficits, ends up mostly in the private sector. That's how they make profits. If the government has a surplus, that means they're sucking money out of the economy to pay the deficit, to pay debt. It comes out of the private sector. The private sector cannot go along continuously with the government having a surplus, because it sucks money away from them. If the government has a deficit, the money goes to them. But the problem is spending into the economy an amount on infrastructure equal to the amount of credit, the interest on the credit that you extend, so that you can keep your monetary supply steady. Modern monetary theory puts governments back in control of public interest, infrastructure, healthcare, and housing. Unemployment is handled like FDR handled it. The WPA, the CCC, etc. That's it.
Wow.
That was
a lot.
When did all of this come to bed into your mind? When did you start to see this?
Okay, that's when I'll go to that right now. This is a talk I gave a year ago on the fall equinox. 2 months before that, I gave a teach-in on Libya, the invasion of Libya. And right at that time, 2 people put out articles about the anthrax. And this is when the anthrax attack, or the anthrax case against Ivins collapsed, because one part of the Justice Department who was not involved with the case against Ivan came out and said, because the families sued the government to pay them for the deaths in anthrax. And this other part of the Justice Department that was handling that case, not the one against Ivins, came out and admitted that the Fort Detrick did not have the facilities to make that anthrax. Okay, and the reason was Ivins worked with tissue cultures, and he's the one who doled out the various samples of anthrax to go to universities and different places to work with. And it's wet anthrax. It's tissue culture. It's bottles with liquid and bacteria in the bottle, growing. And so he sends out a part, takes 10 cc's or 20 cc's or whatever it is, sends it to whoever's going to get it. And so, in order to get from there to what was in the anthrax, which was 1 trillion spores per gram, 1 trillion spores per gram, it floated out of envelopes like it was a gas. It leaked through the pores in the envelopes. Okay, so this was real. This was a real deal, and they just got too cute. They were framing these hijackers for this, and they just got too cute. They used something that can only be made in 2 places. It was either Battelle Labs, which is a government lab that has government contracts in Columbus, Ohio, or Dugway Proving Grounds, which is in Utah. That's where the U.S. biowarfare program is, and Battelle Labs works with them. They have people. They have their own. Each place has their own people in the 2 places. So Battelle has people at Dugway. Dugway has people at Battelle, and that's where the U.S. biowarfare program is. And so that night, I went home and watched this program that I watch all the time. It's called Guns and Butter. And this guy, Graham McQueen, who I mentioned earlier on, was on, and he had this program on about 9/11 and anthrax and how they were connected. And that's what did it.
Has it ever been determined exactly how many deaths were attributed to anthrax exposure?
Oh, yeah, it's a few, it's not a whole lot.
It's a handful, right?
It's a handful, but it was meant to, it's part of it's the number 2 in the shock and awe.
Yes.
It's a second hit.
It's a scare.
Right. It's to create fear and control the public.
You were going so fast, I didn't get how the 9/11 flyers were set up, that they were tricked. They actually were on the planes.
Yeah, that's
They actually were on the planes, but they were tricked into thinking that what?
They weren't actually on the planes. That's the whole thing. It's never been shown that they were on the planes.
But they actually checked into the airports.
They may have, but they didn't get on the planes.
Okay.
They weren't on the manifest. Anyway, let's see. Let me go to this here. No, nice. Back further here. Okay. Here's the summary. The interview that I heard when I got home that night on July 17th was Graham McQueen, forewarning the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan. It's about anthrax. Interview on Guns and Butter, 7/20/2011. He went to this Peace Studies conference. Oh, the other one was, there was another interview before that. Is that on here? The other one was Barry Kissin. He was in March of 2010. That's also in the Guns and Butter archives. But he's an expert. He knew everything about the anthrax attacks. He wrote a letter to, or a memo to Rush Holt about anthrax. Rush Holt was a physicist, apparently, so he had some scientific background. And some of the letters were mailed from his territory. Here's the structural similarities. 9/11 anthrax, blamed on Arabs, Muslims, blamed on Arabs, Muslims. Attack on the body of the nation, attack on human bodies. They hate our freedoms, they hate our freedoms. All these things were said about both, and they were trying to pin it, in the beginning, they were trying to do that, but that fell apart. Let me go to the next one here. Okay, evidence for the connection, the letters. Okay, the letters were, they were like a Hollywood script. I mean, and the other thing was, when I gave this talk, in the audience was a friend of mine who said that at the time of 9/11 and the anthrax attacks, the partner that he had she had a PhD in language arts, and she taught English as a second language for years and years. When in the question and answer, he said, when she saw those letters, she knew immediately that they were fake. And there was an operation there was an exercise prior to this called Dark Winter, in which it was supposedly an attack of, it wasn't anthrax, it was another one. But it was supposed to be Arab intermediaries used by Saddam Hussein to attack the United States. And it was a biowarfare thing. And I'm sure those letters came from that. But the letters were dated 9/11, but they weren't mailed until way after that.
Bill, there's an awful lot of information that's coming out here tonight or so, what have you, but a lot of people are interested in the banking relationship with the corporations with war. And
Okay.
that's an issue that, like, in this month's Nation, with WikiLeaks released 30,000 articles about the corporations and banks' relationships with
Right.
the government and militarism in Central South America over the last 20 years. I recommend people check that out on the websites in Nation. Gives you information, if you read the Nation or get a copy of it, to do that. This is overwhelming to a lot of people. Some of the people left here because if you go off into 9/11, the thing is the relationship, the banks, corporations, and war. This is what I think our people are mostly concerned.
Right, and it's all a racket, like Smedley Butler
Exactly.
said. He told us, that's what I'm saying. Smedley Butler told us who these people are. And the Bushes are agents of these banksters, and they're leading us into war.
But the thing too is they gotta understand that the situation up to today, like when we talked the other night about the tutor for Jimmy Carter, who was promoted by the Trilateral Commission, the same tutor tutored him, Obama, which is the
Right.
past director of the
Right.
Trilateral Commission,
That's the-
Signer Brzezinski. So we only have one party, the money party.
I know.
But the people want to know more and how, in a way, that we can do something about the banks and the corporations and the war.
What-
Not much the
Okay,
history of the
answer to
9/11,
that
because
is
we're never going to do
the
anything
whole-
about
The
that.
whole purpose of the public banking is to make the Federal Reserve irrelevant, because you have to concentrate on your local economy. All economics is local. All economics is local. And if you have a local economic engine, which is funded by public banks, then you can make the Federal Reserve irrelevant.
Was Ron Paul a puppet, though, to such, because that's what he came in saying. we would have.
That's a whole nother issue.
Okay.
But
But that's what he said
all
to do.
economics is local. That's the main thing you have to know. And you have your local public bank, and that's how you run your economy.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of hierarchy in here as far as the putting it together of this over 40 or 75 or 100 years or whatever. The question I have is, how does the current structure being laid out by Alec and the Koch brothers fit into all this? You know, where are they in this hierarchy?
Okay, well, as I said, the banksters are like the drug lords. Alec and all of that, that's some of the foundations that control a lot of stuff, but they're part of the corporate structure, which is in the distribution chain.
So what you're
So
saying is,
the drug lords or banksters are at the top, The distributors are under them, that's the corporations, and there's various levels of distributors.
So what you're
There's
saying is-
wholesale.
So what you're
milk,
saying is the Koch brothers and Alec and all the
And all that
corporations
stuff,
within
it's all
it,
part of it.
they're really doing work for people much higher than them.
Right.
All this is extremely interesting. Problem I have is this going to be, I know it's being filmed, how can I go about going back over?
Oh, I got stuff to hear.
Oh, okay.
I have a video, this whole talk that I did on
gonna get this
Anthrax,
guy over here.
9/11. I have that DVD, and then I
Oh,
have
okay.
all the backup links to the talk. I
All right,
just
great, great.
Let's go back to the Reagan administration and the bombing in Lebanon that killed.
Can't hear you.
Let's go back, excuse me, to the Reagan administration, when the Marines were killed in
Right.
Lebanon. Who do you say killed them?
The same type of Arabs who were being controlled by Israel now who are attacking Syria. One of
So
our
you're
chapters,
saying the Israelis killed them?
but
And-
they use proxies.
Service.
They use proxies.
Right.
They use Arab proxies to do it.
Right.
But they did it because they wanted us to get involved, and we wouldn't get involved, and Reagan, I don't know what prompted him, but he just decided, I'm not gonna get into this.
Yeah, and then he went
pulled
down
them
to
up. But
Grenada.
he actually apparently wanted to have them be peacekeepers, but the
Yeah.
Israelis weren't interested in having peacekeepers. They were interested in having partners. And this was told to me by one of our chapter members who was in the Army during the 80s. He was in the volunteer. I'm not sure when he joined, actually. It was probably late 70s or maybe early 80s. But he talked to people who were over there, and they told him the same kind of stuff, that the Israeli Defense Force was trying to get them involved, and they said, no, we're not getting involved in this. And so that's what happened.
One of your earlier screens talked about 1970 or 79, the church committee. What do you expand on
Okay, the
that?
church committee was, involved, Frank Church looking at all the things that happened during the late 60s and 70s regarding the CIA and all the things that they were doing that were illegal. They were doing a lot of illegal stuff, but all that stuff now is legal, of course, under the Patriot Act. It's all legal now. Then it was illegal. And so Church was investigating all this stuff, and it was supposed to be set things up. They set up that judge program to cover the, if they wanted to wiretap somebody, and it was supposed to go through this judge, the secret star chamber, and the judges would say, well, yes, you can, or no, you can't. Well, that's one of the things that came out of it, but there was a bunch of other stuff that was supposed to keep control on what the CIA was allowed to do, but it's never been enforced.
Is there a church committee report?
Oh, sure there is, you just Google it.
I don't know.
Oh, you don't have a computer.
But that's okay. I would bring this back to my
It should be in
chapter.
the,
Yeah, just, that's what you wanna look at.
it would be in the Congressional Record Archive.
The public banking movement has really gained a lot of steam over the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's where it's
Ron's
at.
state of North Dakota has become, front.
Oh, you're from North Dakota?
No, Ron is. No, but in North Carolina, we have a public banking movement in North Carolina.
Yeah,
Various
that's where it is.
proposals for nonpartisan commissions to study and establish a state bank.
That's where it is.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes.
About how that movement's gaining steam?
How did
Well,
North Dakota get it?
Well, Ellen Brown is the one, she's the guru of public banking. So she has a book called Web of Debt. So if you just go to webofdebt.com, and then there's Ellen Brown Public Banking. She has another website, but basically she's the guru of public banking. But the thing is, the thing is that all economics is local, and the public banking creates credit within an economic zone, whether it's a city, county, state, whatever, and the public bank invests local money into local stuff. They lend money, and they can create credit in the community that way. They spend into infrastructure the amount that they lend out to cover the amount that they lend out. They keep the monetary supply the same, but they don't use fractional reserve banking. They only lend out on a one-to-one basis what they have liquid assets of.
So what states do you think might be closest to instituting
I don't
their
know,
own public?
but it sounds
banking?
like your state's getting there.
Now, is it that North Dakota is unique because they formed a state bank, or
Yes.
other state banks? There were state banks in many states, but they have devolved.
Yeah.
They've lost their,
Yeah,
their,
North
impetus.
Dakota did this like 100 years ago.
Yeah, right.
There were Swedes, I guess, they had come from, from Europe. They had been through this thing with banks, and they wanted to take care of their own
At one
self.
time, there was a state
And they
bank of Iowa.
they set up their own state bank. They've been running off that forever, and they're not broke.
Well,
They have-
we did two things at that time. It was the NPL, which was the populist movement of the day. And NPL Act lasted as a viable entity for about 6 years. It was a very socialist people's movement of the time. And
Just 100 years ago.
They were anti-war, yeah, and they came into power around 1916. And they
That's when
they held the majority for just a brief time, and most of them had come out of the Republican Party. And what happens with both parties, if you attack one, they'll gang up on you to take you out. And that's what eventually happened. And then they ended up over time merging in with the Democrats in the late 50s, but it was kind of a moot point.
But they instituted that bank 100 years ago.
The initial reason for, we did two things, the bank and the state mill and elevator, because everything was controlled out of St. Paul by the railroads, and they controlled the freight rates, and General Mills and people like that were the buyers controlled all of our farm markets, and we were 90% an agricultural economy.
It sounds like a co-op for money.
Right, and that's what it is. And the thing is that, all economics is local. Use public banks, use 1-to-1 ratio of lending out to what you've got in the bank. And that way you don't run into this problem with excess currency out there that has nothing behind it.
You referred in your talk to, you said there were problems in the move to amend
Yeah,
movement, which, as
right.
I understand, is trying to get an amendment in the Constitution that would take power, that would make the corporations have to be chartered by the state, and they are not people.
Right.
Now, what's the problem
Okay,
with
the
that?
problem you have to read these two articles by Glenn Greenwald. They were in the Chick-fil-A thing. But if you just go to salon.com/opinion/Greenwald, they were, let's see, the one was maybe 2 weeks ago, and the other one was last week. But he shows in there specifically how corporations pretty much automatically get, and he was specifically dealing really with free speech, so it's just the First Amendment. But there's other amendments that may not apply to, but under the First Amendment, they pretty much automatically have constitutional rights, because they can donate money like this Chick-fil-A guy is doing. He's donating money to anti-gay marriage,
Right.
entities.
Right.
And there's no way the government can make a law against that. And what you have to go back to is Acorn. Remember how the Congress tried to pass this law defunding Acorn, and the guy from Orlando up here, who was pretty good, he didn't make it the second, didn't get voted in the second time.
Brown?
But, no, his name is, I forget it,
Yeah, I forget it.
G something, but at any rate,
Grayson.
Alan
Grayson.
Grayson. He was the one who prevented that because he showed it was a bill of attainder. And I think that's third on the Bill of Rights, I think. Second is guns, and then third is bill of attainder. Well, one more thing I want to say about that bill of attainder, actually, when you go back to not the Constitution, but the Magna Carta. As the Magna Carta evolved, what it really referred to was assassination of a citizen, which is what we're doing. But that's what Bill of Attainder was about. The Bill of Attainder was a contract to kill somebody that the king didn't like.
What, you mentioned earlier about Johann Galtung. He was
Right, he's a peace activist. He
Yes, he
was
is.
involved in that peace conference and it was in Pakistan, but it was about Afghanistan and what to do, because they, all it looked like the violence was over, they thought. And this was in early 2001, and they were brainstorming, trying to come up with plans on what to do.
So he's still,
He was part of that conference. Graham McQueen was like the head of it,
yeah.
but Graham McQueen was part of it.
Have you ever looked into Pamela Harriman, who was formerly Pamela Churchill, who was the daughter-in-law of Winston, and who had been a...
I've heard about
She
something
had
about
been a
it.
girlfriend of Harriman, who was part of Brown and Root. They're all connected from the 20s and 30s. And she ended up marrying him late in life after she had been through some other wealthy husbands, came to the U.S. and became a U.S. citizen or whatever. And she was the one that introduced Clinton to the powers that be at the time and got him nominated in '92.
Right, well, there's more to that. There's a book called Compromised, which I have a link to in the CD. The book is called Compromised, Clinton, Bush, and the CIA. It was by a guy named Terry Reed, who was in the Air Force Security Service. I was in the Army Security Agency. It was the Air Force Security Agency, or Air Force Security Service, Naval Security Group, and the Army Security Agency. And they're all the military arms of NSA. And he wrote this book called Compromised, and he was involved in this thing in MENA. He was training Nicaraguans, the Contra pilots, to fly 2-engine planes, and they were trying to fly them. But him and this guy named Barry Seal, who was in the CIA, they were going back and forth, and they were training these pilots. And there was a guy named Bill Cooper, who was the guy who flew the plane that got shot down in remember Hassan Foos and the plane that got shot down in Nicaragua? Bill Cooper was the guy who was flying that plane, and I think he was killed. But Barry Seal was killed by, probably, I don't know who killed him, but he was killed by either the CIA because he knew too much, or the drug lords because he was a smuggler for them.
Those
But
are
all
all
this
supposed
stuff.
to operate out of Mena, Arkansas.
Yeah, right. And that Clinton was just allowed it to happen. He wasn't smuggling drugs. That was the thing that got the whole thing. It was just a thing that.
That was way bigger than him.
Yeah, it was way bigger than Clinton. He was just allowing it to happen. He just was kind of passive. But what happens in that book is Clinton is told during this time, probably late '80s, that you're going to get that job that you wanted to get, Bill. We've got it all set up for you. So he knew this. He knew he was going to. The plan for him to be president was before 1990.
Well,
Or maybe it was around 1990, but it was well before 1992.
How come that happened if George Bush Sr. was part of this group?
What?
Because Clinton defeated him.
Because Clinton was put in there. See, that's the whole thing. That's the thing about these banksters. They put in Democrats to get things done that Republicans couldn't possibly do. I mean, Obama's doing things that Bush had wet dreams about. He could never do them.
He goes after
He
Social
could never
Security
do
and
them.
Medicare.
And then Clinton got rid of Glass-Steagall.
Yeah, he got rid of Glass-Steagall.
That was his
He got the
That
WTO.
was
He did
his-
all this stuff.
Yeah.
They put
Yeah.
Democrats in
Yeah.
there to do things that Republicans can't
Right.
do.
And when Pamela Harriman, during Clinton's watch, he appointed Pamela Harriman to be the ambassador to France.
Right, I remember that.
And she died riding horses in London one weekend, and Jacques Chirac and Clinton were in a big fight as to whose airplane was going to bring her home. And when he did her eulogy at the National Cathedral or wherever, he said, "I am here today because she was there." And he admitted that she put him in office.
Can you imagine the Republicans trying to cut Medicare or Social Security? You definitely need a Democrat. Well, possibly, you need Obama or someone like that to be able to do it. And this was us gray hairs, which we have the raging grannies, that have to start a new battle to be, I don't think I'm ever gonna beat these banks, but
Let me just give you this brief.
the 60s people still get a lot of life to fight, the cause.
This is about
Right
the
here in
Anthrax.
Europe.
It was a deep event, is a terror attack, war or other similar event that is preceded by or occurs at the same time as an exercise or drill that mimics the event. Remember the presidential secession exercise during Reagan's hit? During the exercise or drill, a covert signal occurs and the drill goes live. 9/11 was a deep event. There were there were 4 or 5 on the day, but there are many others that were before that were related to it. Invasion of Libya, Operation Southland. That was an operation that went live on March 19th when was the event? It was 2010, right? So that went live on was it 2011? Whichever year it was. Yeah, it was 2011. This Operation Southland was a invasion of a North African country where a dictator had to be controlled, and that was the run-up to invasion of Libya, and it went live on March 19th. JFK assassination. There was a exercise then, 7/7 in London. There was an exact mirror image exercise going on that day of what happened on 7/7. The same tube stations and the same bus line, exactly identical. And Netanyahu was in London. He was pre-warned about it. A couple of other. That's the other thing. The people are always there who are involved in it on the day that whatever it is takes place. Again, MLK assassination was an exercise then. Attempted assassination on Reagan was the presidential secession exercise. Anthrax had one. 9/11 had several. The war in Afghanistan had one. There was an exercise that went live on the day that Afghanistan was invaded.
Bill, we got 5 minutes left here. I wonder if you can conclude is how we, this group here, because I think we have people who do believe a lot that follow the money, that's the money in the bank, stupid. But yet, how do we relate this to our fellow
What we have to
VFP
do.
members? And you get some, and where do we want to go with it? And in a sense, in fact, because with the statement to abolish war, that these people, if you could relate to how this can affect to abolish war.
This is 100 and something year exercise.
It's going to take us 100 years?
It's 100 years, it's public banking. You have to make the Federal Reserve irrelevant.
But hasn't this activity really been going on since the fall of the Holy Roman Empire?
Oh, probably, yeah. I mean, it's, but see, money, back in England, in 1100 or sometime during the 1100s, they started using what are called tally sticks for money. They didn't use currency or anything, and they were just sticks, and there were notches on them, and each notch indicated a certain denomination of money, and when someone wanted money or borrowed money, they took a stick, they made the notches, then they split the stick so that the stick, when the guy had enough to pay it back, he brought the stick in and it matched the original stick. You could put them next to each other and they fit.
Yeah. In reference to what I just said, if you want to go back farther in history than 110 years, there's a guy out who's written several best-selling books. His name's Jim Mars, with 2 R's. He writes a book right now called The Rise of the Fourth Reich, and he chronicles where these corporations that are manipulating us today came from. That they really come from the oldest Bilderberger families, going all the way back to the fall of the Holy Roman Empire, or the rise of it.
Yes.
You know, the First Reich, the Second Reich, the Third Reich, and what we consider today the Fourth Reich.
Right. Alan Brown's book, The Web of Debt, has a lot of this history, has all this history in it. Some of the links that I have on the CD are The Secret of Oz, which tells about the American history of it, The Money Masters, which talks about money in these banksters, the first 2 Zeitgeist films, Zeitgeist 1, Zeitgeist 2, talks about all this. But basically, the object is public banking, create local economics, local growth, with local money, and make the Federal Reserve irrelevant. And it's going to take a long time. And people need to get educated on modern monetary theory. They have to go to school. They need to apply to school at University of Missouri, Kansas City. Go on their program, get an MBA, and go out and promote modern monetary theory. I mean, this is we got 138 years to the water boy. The water boy is coming. 138 years. That's Aquarius.
Why was John F. Kennedy Jr. assassinated?
Because he's a threat. I mean, there would be so many people who would vote for him, you couldn't imagine. I mean, he'd win by 80-20.
Right.
And if you go to Brass Check TV, you go to the assassination section and look, but it's on there.
So the Kennedys weren't part of this?
No, they weren't. Okay, what did JFK do? He went against them. He issued the silver certificates, which was to cut the banksters out.
And he started talking about getting out of Vietnam.
Right, and he started talking
More than
about
that.
getting out
More
of
than
Vietnam.
that.
But the main thing was the silver certificates, and they were not Federal Reserve notes. And that was the big thing that he did, that they went after him for. That's, Gaddafi had the gold dinar. That was
Yeah,
one of the
that's what he
big
wanted
reasons
to
they
do.
went after him.
Exactly.
One of the big things.
Yeah.
Who else? Andrew Jackson, he killed the bank. He said that were his dying words. That I killed the bank. He was the one who stopped, he ended this first central bank that these banksters owned. And he got rid of it. Then you got into the Civil War. Lincoln went to them to borrow money to do the war. They wanted to charge him 30%. He said, no, forget that. Then he had his Treasury Secretary look into it. What can I do? He looked at the Constitution and he said, we can create our own currency. He issued the greenbacks.
But there is evidence to show that Joe Kennedy, John's
Oh, yeah,
father,
he was
he
part-
actually was one of those people that pumped
Yeah,
millions
right.
of dollars into the war machine in
But-
Germany to fight Stalinism.
But JFK was, there was a speech that he gave. It's, I think there's a link to it on Brass Check as well, when he talks about secret societies, and he talks about these secret societies and how we cannot allow these secret societies to rule our country. We have to rule it ourselves.
No wonder they
That was one of the
killed
things, that was an important speech that he
Yeah, he didn't
gave,
do much.
was JFK on secret societies. You can probably just Google that.
Was
and
Lyndon
find it.
Johnson part of this?
Well, yeah, he was
Oh, yeah.
he was in the car. When the shots rang out, there were so many shots coming. One of the words out of LBJ's mouth, "Oh God, they're gonna kill us all."
No, that wasn't LBJ. That was the senator from Texas.
Or was it him? But they
Oh, it
were
was
both in
Connolly.
the car.
They-
They
Connolly,
were
yeah.
both in the car.
LBJ was in Washington at the time.
No, he was there.
he was there.
No, he was
Was he?
there.
He was in the
Yes,
car
was there. That's
behind
what I'm saying.
Kennedy's
I'm
car.
almost certain that he's the one who said that.
He flew back in an airplane.
Yeah, he flew back on the
But
airplane.
it was Connolly that was in the front seat of
So
the.
Connolly was
you
in the-
think LBJ had pre-knowledge of this?
But he didn't like it.
Yeah.
He didn't like it. And I think I have the link in there too, his girlfriend.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
said he told her, we won't be having that SOB around anymore after tomorrow.
Yeah, but he didn't like
Yeah,
it.
Jim
I
Garrison
mean,
did
it
all
was,
that study.
he just had to go along with it.
But he hated Kennedy.
Yeah, I'm sure he
He
did.
hated the
I'm
whole.
sure
So
he
they didn't
did.
like each other too
I'm
much.
sure he did.
I want to get to run against him.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me go out and put these
You want
together.
some money for these?
Oh, no.
Just take
These are
one.
free. No, I gotta put them in. I gotta get them out.
It's good because the battery was running out on this.
Yeah. Listen, whoa.
It's trust me. It's a cannon. It's built real good.
Oh, yeah.
Continue.
For a long time. I hope I live long enough.
What a world.
And that's where, John McCormick from,
I gotta get
I don't
down.
know about
Okay.
that.
Now I gotta make.
he was the one that did the hearing.
This is